The Ducati Monster 821 was launched in India in 2015. The biggest difference between this and the older model was the revised and updated engine. Aneesh, who joins us today, picked up this Monster in 2016 and uses it mostly for touring and the occasional city commute. Hi Aneesh, lovely to have you here. So the Ducati Monster brand quite literally defined brand Ducati and has quite literally kept it alive. So how did you zero in on the Monster and how's your experience been so far with it?
Thanks, Ivan, for having me on the channel. It's very good to be here. And you're right, I mean, the Ducati experience has been fantastic. It's been a topsy-turvy ownership experience with a lot of frustrations, but stupidly without any regrets. To talk about the first part, brand Ducati, the Italians really do know how to pull at your heartstrings. They know how to give you an automotive offering. But to answer the first part of your question where you said, how did I zero in on the Ducati? It was always a bike that I loved, the Monster. I mean, there's an iconic video of Senna riding it in the early 1990s where he's riding around Monaco on a Monster. It's been a bike that I've always sort of cherished. It's been on my wall as well, on a poster. But when I was looking for a superbike last year, in the month of May last year, it was a Z800, a Street Triple, and the Monster that I extensively rode. The Z800 lost early on because it was heavy. It was a much older motorcycle. The Street Triple and the Ducati were in the running for the longest time. The showroom experience at Triumph was fantastic. But I think in the end, I figured that the Street Triple was down for an upgrade, which it got this year.
Recently.
And the power figures on the Street Triple last year, they had a little bit of issues on
paper and everything.
Correct, absolutely. And eventually, I think the handling of this bike, plus how I felt, how comfortable I felt on the Monster, eventually won it. And touch wood, no regrets on the bike yet.
Okay, so now the Monster is all about style and aggression. And how's the performance been in real life conditions?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, I've had this bike. I got married to this bike on the 7th of May 2016, and since then till now, I've clocked just a shade under 10,000 kilometers. Out of which 6 months the bike was sort of parked in the service center because I had an accident. We'll talk about it in detail, I guess, a little ahead. Okay. But I mean, as far as the riding experience goes, I mean, the bike is phenomenal. I mean, I have been on long rides to Valparai or Dhanushkodi or Ooty or Coorg, or short rides to Yercaud and MM Hills or BR Hills. I have a very nice group of Ducati owners that I go riding with. We have a smaller group called Motorheads that I ride with, and meet some very good friends on the road. So I've taken the bike touring, I've taken the bike on the twisties, I do ride it to office when I don't have meetings or I'm not dressed in formals. Okay, I can take it to office, so there's city use as well. My commutes are not very long, but I mean, I can take it to office, which is great. Like with any bike, right? I mean, the good part about the Ducati is comes with 3 riding modes: urban, touring, and sport. Yeah, so the urban mode sort of dulls the power down. It puts out less power than it does otherwise.
Probably more linear.
And also, it's much more linear. 8-stage traction control, 3-stage ABS really helps you configure the bike to your riding style. Okay. So in traffic, you can be a little less aggressive. The bike doesn't egg you on, which is great. Out on the highway, when you're, the bike will happily sit at 150, 160, constantly cruise for a few hundred kilometers at a stretch without any issue. It's got a large tank, so I get about 220 kilometers of range on it on a full tank. I have taken the bike to a top speed of about 240, 250, but
on
I mean,
naked,
on a naked, which the wind blast is a lot, but on short bursts, it's all right. But to sit at 160 or 170, not an issue at all. I do have a girlfriend who sits pillion with me all the time. Okay. So we have a small pannier set up on the bike as well, and the bike is fairly comfortable on the highways. But where it is actually a bliss is on the twisties.
Okay.
The bike handles like a dream. I mean, it's super light, it's very nimble. The feedback from the front and the back is phenomenal. The brakes are spot on, the front and the back, so you can correct mid corner if you've sort of been a little more enthusiastic than you should be.
How's the, sorry for butting in, how's the performance in the twist?
So, you put it in sport mode and the throttle response is immediate.
Okay.
It's very aggressive. It still will put down the power in a very linear fashion, but it's right on tap.
Okay.
It's as if, the bike is urging you to go faster.
Okay.
It's pushing you to sort of push the envelope. It's a lot of fun on the twisties. It's very easy to flick from side to side. I'm a big guy. I'm trying to lose weight, but it's easy. So it's easy to flick it from side to side. I've done it with a pillion. A lot of my riding friends keep chastising me about the fact that I'm a little less careful than I should be. But within the realm of the bike, I'm very, very comfortable. To that effect, the bike has been a wonderful addition to my garage.
And in terms of heating, how
So, I mean, it is an 800cc naked. So, on the city, this is oil cooled. There is oil cooled on it, but see, on the city in traffic and Bangalore, you have to expect heat. The bike will regularly do 100, 105 degrees Celsius, which gets very, very hot. It can burn your thighs if you're not careful about it. But once you open up on the highway, the bike will start cooling down to about the mid 80s. Sometimes if it's a cool morning, it'll stay in the early 80s as well, which is very, very comfortable. It helps because if it's in a cold morning, you can stop and sort of toast your hands a little bit for a second. But otherwise, I think in general, it's all right. Could it be better? Of course. How? I'm sure Ducati has put a lot of money into it. India was probably not the market that they were. India being closer to the sun than the rest of the world together was probably not what they had in mind. But well, it's something that you've got to live with.
And you're going touring a lot, so so efficiency becomes important there. So
absolutely. So I mean, the kitna deti hai question is an unescapable question here. But I think on tours I get between a 16 and a 20 depending on how gentle or harsh I am with on the throttle. On the city you can expect between 12 and 14, which is on par with most motorcycles on this range of this liter club of this capacity. So that's pretty all right. So I'm fairly happy on that front.
So Aneesh, you told me, you already told me it handles really well. But let's get into more detail. How is it, in the city? How is it in the ghats? And how's the braking? And in all these different conditions.
So start with the city first.
Okay.
Not very tall, very easy on you when you're standing in traffic light to traffic light, or in
weight doesn't get you.
It doesn't bother you too much. The bike, although it's about 220 kilos, it masks the weight very, very well. It's not top heavy or it's not bottom heavy. It's sort of in the center.
Balanced,
So it's very balanced in that. I'm not a tall guy, but my feet are firmly flat on the ground. But standing on a traffic light, I'm fairly comfortable. Traffic light to traffic light, the performance of the bike is not what you're testing, but Bangalore again. There are people ducking in from
braking.
All sorts of places. The bike stops fairly quickly because good brakes. So that helps. On the highway, when you are what you're looking for is really a planted motorcycle when you're going dead straight for a few hundred kilometers. Very, very planted. It doesn't feel skittish. It doesn't jump lanes.
Even at higher speeds.
At higher speeds, it's great. There is a little bit of crosswind. You can feel the bike pull, but the bike won't change lanes. It's a nice, reassuring feeling to have. Again, because it's India, highways are not sacrosanct. There'll be aunties crossing the highway. There'll be truck drivers doing U-turns. There are horses which I've hit, and we will talk about it. So doing even 130, 140, and a truck decides to pull a U-turn. You jam the brakes. The ABS is phenomenal. The electronics on the bike is excellent. Even at the least amount of interference, the ABS kicks in very, very easily. you will never lose control of the motorcycle. The traction control really helps. So what really helps you out is the electronics of the motorcycle. It's not interfering to the point that it's affecting your riding, but it is definitely interfering when you are going to have a crash.
Close call, yeah.
Correct. So it helps. But man, again, coming back to the handling on the ghats, the twisties, that's where the bike really comes alive, you know. It's, like I said, the feedback from both ends is really good. You're sitting on the bike rather than in it, which makes a lot of difference. You know, the tank is designed in a way for you to grip the tank and
how's the riding position?
Yeah, so you know, the riding position again, the handlebar is a little more upright, but you can sort of, you know, hunker your shoulders down a little bit, come a little closer, focus on the road in front of you, and then, you know, take it from corner to corner, and that's when the bike really comes alive. Like I said, the 3-stage sort of riding modes that are available. Put it in sport and the bike will egg you to go a little faster. It'll want you to take the next corner faster than you did the previous one. It'll want you to enjoy it a little more. Every corner you are going faster than you did the previous time till you've reached sort of your capacity. And
limit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure my limit is way before the bike's limit is. So I'm very confident. I'm not a good enough rider to have tested the bike to its limit. There are a lot of track riders who would probably be able to do justice to the motorcycle a lot more. It is something that I've planned to try and go to a track day.
You should.
You know, try and go for a track day, learn, and then use what I've learned on the track and see how far I can push the bike. But that's something that I haven't done till now. On the twisties, I think the only thing missing, I would say, is if I had a little more bite from the rear brake, I would probably, in hindsight, I would probably pay a little bit more if there was a little more bite on the back. You know, on the highway it doesn't make a difference because you're planting from the front, but you know, when you're on the twisties, you want to make those little mid-corner corrections. That's where the rear brake sort of, whether it lacks bite or it lacks feel, I'm probably sort of dilly-dallying in between. So I would want that.
How are the tires? How are the tires?
So I've had the bike, like I said, for a shade under 10,000 kilometers. I am ashamed to report that I have changed one set already. I changed it much faster than the peers in my group. Most of the people in my group have crossed 10,000 on their first set. I did my first set at only 5,000. These are the Pirelli Rosso 2s. The sad part is, and this is where I'm going to call out Ducati India a little bit and say that so the Pirelli Rosso 2s on the Monster, the rear especially, is a 180/60 section. This is an odd section to find. Most bikes of this class and segment do 180/55 or 190/55. But this is the only one doing 180/60, and I think the Panigale does 180/60. Very difficult to find tires. The showroom doesn't stock them readily. Ducati India doesn't import them regularly. When I ran out of tires the first time around, I had to wait 1.5 months for my next set. Which to a biker where I'm only riding on the weekends and I have a traveling job, so I'm always traveling. So those 2 weekends that I was in Bangalore just to see this in the parking, but just because I don't have tires.
And what happens?
Extremely frustrating experience.
What happens when you put a different section? I mean,
so because the electronics on the bike is so advanced, what the showroom tells us, or what I've read online, and what the owner's manual tells us as well, is that if you change the profile on the tire, the traction control mapping will change. And essentially the bike will keep throwing up warnings because it feels that it is slipping.
So it's calibrated for this size.
It's calibrated for this size and this profile, and even a 0.5 mm change to that will make a difference, is what we've been given to understand. I know, people run different profiles and don't care, but I would rather not mess with Ducati R&D, which they must have spent a lot of money doing. So I would rather not mess with it.
Yeah, so Ajit and Ankit, who were here earlier on the show, they told that owning a Ducati is a costly affair, and it definitely is. It should be. It's a premium thing. But how has your experience been with it in terms of service and support from the company?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, what do I say? Of course, I mean, you are paying for the brand and the premium that the brand offers. But I'm going to talk to you about a couple of experiences here.
Okay.
So I've had the bike since, like I said, I married the bike 7th of May in 2016. 1st April this year, I had a mid-major sort of a crash.
Okay.
The right-hand side of the bike was damaged. It took the service center about 6 months to bring my bike back on road,
Okay.
which is a combination of also one, fighting with the insurance company,
And-
two, getting the parts that the bike needed to get it fixed. There were a few errors or mistakes in the order that took another month
Okay.
to get rectified. Then when the bike was absolutely fine and got back on road, there were a couple of small issues that I found. Again, it went back in for a month. So I think, all in all, I think, well, the insurance bill was pretty hefty as well. So I can tell you that the bike is not cheap, right? But in terms of, but I had the accident, which is fine. But if I was to not, let's say, talk about the regular ownership experience and say, compared to a Triumph or maybe even a Kawasaki, you're paying about 10 to 15% more on the annual service,
Hourly charges. Right?
on the hourly charges that you spend on. The showroom that way is pretty fair. They have very standardized rates. They tell you how many hours they will work on for a particular issue, and you know fairly in advance what you're going to spend. On a year's sort of ownership. Of course, at 30,000, I think it's 25 for the Monster and 30,000 for most other Ducatis. You have the Desmo service, which is the valve clearance check. That service, I think, is expensive. It's about 30,000 bucks for the Monster itself. So yes, you are definitely paying a premium. The ownership cost is higher than a lot of other motorcycles, but it's not significant. When it comes to changing parts, definitely I think the bike is more expensive. I have added small bits and bobs on the bike which do add up. I think all in all, that's something that people should consider, that it is a little more expensive than most other brands to own.
And what are the service intervals?
So the first service, of course, is within 1,000 kilometers of you picking up the bike, which is just a run-in, and it's an insignificant service. After that, it's 1 year or 10,000 kilometers.
Okay.
And it's 1 year or 15,000 kilometers. And it's a huge interval.
Okay.
And the second service is again 2 years or 30,000 kilometers.
Okay.
But given that we're in India, the road conditions are a little more dusty,
And,
the wear and tear is a little higher, fuel quality is a lot lower. I did my service at half the interval. So I did a service at 7,500, and I did my 1 year service, even though I've not crossed 10,000. I did my 1 year service in May of this year as well. So could you take it a little easier and not do it? Well, it's your call. But again, you've spent so much money on the bike. I would
rather play it safe.
Yeah, just playing it safe. Let's be honest. The one big issue, I think, is the fact that because the bike is an import, the showroom also has been around for just about 2 years. They are still trying to figure out what sort of parts, what is the usage on various parts and other,
stock it,
and they don't stock it, and it takes them 21 to 30 days to order a part from Italy, and then the order goes, then it goes to Thailand, then it arrives in India, then the customs clearance, then it reaches the showroom.
Huge process.
So it's a very large process. I mean, I lost a small oil cap.
Okay, yeah, you're telling me about
right? I was telling you, a small oil cap. That oil cap cost 600 bucks, right? But the showroom didn't have it. They expected me to wait for 20 to 30 days for just an oil cap. Right? And this is the oil cap for the brake reservoir. So it's not even like essential to the bike, right? Thankfully, the showroom in Gurgaon had it because they've been around for a lot longer and they've stocked their inventory a little better. So I called them up, they shipped the cap, and my bike was online in like 3 days. But if I'd waited for VST here in Bangalore, it would have taken them a month. But again, I'm not calling out the showroom here, but I'm just talking about the experience. This is something that you should keep in mind.
And it is something, it is totally essential. You can't ride without it.
Exactly. So you have to deal with the fact that you have a premium motorcycle. Parts will take a little longer. The service time is a little longer. They do have only a couple of technicians here. They have one fully trained qualified professional and two other juniors or 2 or 3 other juniors assisting him. So, you have to wait for an appointment to go to the service center. So these are things that you should, one should be aware of when you're picking up a premium motorcycle.
But service quality is good.
The service quality is phenomenal. I mean, VST has, invested money on a nice place. It's big, it's large. When you put your bike in, you're happy that,
it's in a safe place.
It's in a happy place. It's a nice, clean setup. It looks very akin to a hospital ward. So when your bike goes into the service bay, you're not like, you're not second guessing, should I have gone somewhere else? So that's great. That to me has been excellent. But I mean, the timing is something that everybody should be aware of. It is not a Maruti that you can take in today and get out tomorrow. It's not going to happen. So essentially, if you remember, the first thing I said, it's been a frustrating, but yet very happy ownership experience.
Clearly, you had a lot of experience, with service and riding and everything. So tell me, do you suggest any changes or modifications to make the ownership experience a bit more better? Maybe add-ons or anything.
So I'm running the bike pretty much stock. I haven't added anything to it. I mean, there are regular bits. I mean, this is a pannier set, like I had mentioned earlier, that I installed. So it replaces the grab rails to add the panniers on. I have a couple of frame protectors, the tank protector here, and like every biker, I have a RAM mount for either the phone or the GoPro. I run the bike pretty much stock. Will I recommend additions to the bike? I don't think there are too many on the Monster. A lot of people change the exhaust, but I mean, personally to me, the stock exhaust on the Monster.
It sounds very nice. It sounds beautiful.
It is the best sounding stock exhaust in the Ducati range. I will piss off a lot of my other rider friends, but stock exhaust wise, I think it is the best sounding Ducati in the range. I know a lot of people put either Termis or Acras on the bike. Personally, I wouldn't change it. But then they do get a little more performance, they get a lot more noise out of the exhaust. But it's again, I would say that it's a personal choice. I would definitely recommend adding fork protectors. I would definitely recommend adding a crash protection on the bike. Something that I've ordered after my crash. The new set hasn't come, but the crash protector did take an impact during my crash as well. So it made a difference. Apart from that, I think if you are the kinds, you can add a screen so that you can save yourself from the wind blast a little bit. You can add a tank bag, or you can add a couple of other small things. But largely, the Monster as a range stays pretty stock, and they've done a pretty good job of it. So I'm not very I don't know what to tell you if I had to add something. The one thing I would say that I would call Ducati out on is for this much money, they could have added a fuel gauge and a gear indicator. I mean, I have to guess what my fuel consumption at the time is.
I think only when it comes to reserve, it lights
Only
up.
when it comes to reserve, the light pops up, and then also you're like, would it do 30? Would it do 40? How much would I have used of? So it is always a calculation in your head. So now it's gotten to a point where I fill up based on the number of kilometers I've run. It's not when the reserve light pops in. It's not when, how much of time. It's nothing. It's just, okay, I'm going to hit 200. Let me just fill up at the next pump that I see. So just around the 200 mark, I will go fill up the fuel. I mean, I'm going to call Ducati out. It would have been, it's a digital display. It would have been a small digital part to this LCD screen and a sensor on the tank that would have just changed, made all the difference in the world. And if they had given me a gear indicator, I think it would have just made life so much easier. And we're talking about the bike was launched in 2015. So I mean, technology was already there. So I'm just calling them out on that bullshit. Otherwise great. So yeah.
All right, Aneesh, it was great to have you here. There's a lot of experience, in the last few minutes on the Monster. So I hope, to see you again on a long ride.
Yeah, same here. I mean, thank you for having me. It's been great. I hope that, stuff that I've shared here, there are people who can pick up on it and it helps them decide for or against the Monster. Just to tell people here that there is a new Monster which has been launched already.
2018 version.
Correct, and it should be in India in a few months. I am told that it has a color LCD and has probably the fuel gauge as well as the gear indicator. So that's there. There are some new colors on it. I think engine and frame wise the bike remains the same. I think braking, etc. So the mechanicals of the bike remain the same. We've added a few cosmetic changes to the bike, but apart from that, I think it's the same motorcycle. So yeah, it's been fantastic being here, and it's been fantastic married to this bike as well.
Monster.
So yes, so yeah, thank you, Evan. Thank you so much.
So guys, that's what owning a Ducati Monster 821 is all about. It's a very capable machine, but like a typical Ducati, it's expensive to maintain. If you have any questions, do ask them below. And please do subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching.